Well, let's just talk about the markets, what we can expect for the week. Right now, all the futures are kind of flat to negative. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just go through some other, in the global news, global banking regulators agreed to relax a rule designed to ensure that big banks are able to weather financial crisis without running short of cash. It's interesting that they're relaxing those rules. They're relaxing those rules because banks just are not equipped, based on the current economic condition, to hang on to all this cash, these reserves that the European banking system is required. So they're going to relax the rules. Well, wait a minute. I thought the relaxed rules is what got them in trouble. Bingo. But that was a long time ago. That was like, 2.5 years ago. So apparently 2.5 years is good enough. Most memories have gone numb by now, and they can relax the rules. But anyway, that's what's happening over there. Fed insiders, the Fed insiders say the central bank's move to tie rate boost, rates being the rate that they charge interest, right, for everybody that borrows money from them, all the banks in the country. They're looking to maybe raise those rates because they've been artificially too low for the last 10 years. But nevertheless, they're saying that the central bank's move to tie those rate increases to specific jobless numbers and inflation levels will likely be only temporary, or a temporary part of its toolkit. What toolkit? A toolkit to me, if someone said, hey, here's my toolbox, I would expect to find all kinds of different tools, right? I have a couple different toolboxes. I have one toolbox that I use for mechanical kinds of stuff, and that has all kinds of tools in it, right? The Fed's got one tool in its toolbox. So to even talk about a toolkit or to add, they don't have any toolkit. They used to. They always have for years. They don't anymore. They have one. It's called quantitative easing. That's all they've got. So the Fed insiders are debating right now, and I think the markets are going to start to debate this week, this idea. And of course, they're not going to do anything. The markets are going to react until the end of the month after the next Fed meeting. But what is going to happen to rates? Is the Fed going to increase rates, or are they going to stick to this idea of 6.5% unemployment rate? We're seeing unemployment go up now. Are they going to stick to that 6.5% unemployment rate and something consistently over 2% for inflation before they think about raising rates? So the Fed says, it's going to consider the fact that this idea of tying any increase in the rate to jobless claims, or not jobless claims, unemployment rate or inflation, is only a temporary thing, and it's not likely to be continued too much longer. It's a temporary part of their so-called toolkit. U.S. businesses took on new office space at a very slow pace in the fourth quarter, as apparently employers, the report says, employers are very reluctant and very cautious about adding any kind of new jobs. So obviously, if you're a manufacturer, if you're someone that warehouses different things, you're not likely to be increasing that space or dealing with that, right? You're not likely to do that if you are somewhat concerned about what could be happening in 2013. So businesses took on less expansion, basically in office space. This is primarily office space. This wouldn't be, I know I just mentioned manufacturing and warehousing as an example, but this is talking about specific office space. So this is more of a white collar kind of thing. So anyway, here's one of the reports that came out over the weekend. It's a little bit disturbing, that junk bonds. Now, basically, if you've got a high yield fund, the reason it's high yield yield, meaning the return, is because it's a junk bond fund. Junk bonds continue to clock new milestones. In other words, continue to see investors flock to these funds because people are looking for a much greater interest rate. So that's what is happening. And I find that very surprising because I don't understand how you can be flocking to bond funds in general or any kind of bonds because you feel somewhat cautious, because you feel a little bit concerned, because you feel that you want to take some of the risk off the table and go a little bit more to safety. Junk bonds to me is not a place to go, but nevertheless, it is for a lot of people. Let's look at what's coming up this week. U.S. consumer credit figures come out for November. They're due tomorrow. They'll be out tomorrow. Consumer credit figures for the month of November are due, and I'm really curious about that. I'm looking forward to that number. On Wednesday, Germany is releasing its November industrial production data. That will be interesting to see how that shakes out, to see if Germany now is finally starting to get a little bit of an impact, well, they already have, on the rest of the southern European continent, if it's hitting Germany, continuing to hit Germany as hard as it has been in September, October. So we'll see how that looks. On Thursday, of course, we get the jobless claims. China on Friday is reporting its inflation data for December. And U.S. reports on the balance of trade for the month of November and, I don't know why this matters, the budget deficit. It's interesting, when I read the report over the weekend, it didn't say that it's going to report on what the deficit might be. It sounded so just going to report on the budget deficit. Not if there will be a budget deficit. We don't talk in those terms for the last 3 years. It's just kind of a given. So that's what's happening. Of course, politicians, I read a very interesting article that is on my Facebook page, facebook.com/financial issues, about John Boehner. The fact that there was a movement in the House to replace him, and it was pulled off. In other words, they decided not to go through with the so-called coup of replacing John Boehner at the very last minute. Not sure why. Not sure they're sure why. But nevertheless, it didn't happen. I talked about the 113th Congress in its first act of business showing its gutlessness as a result of that. But anyway, the national debt is growing, do you think? Total public debt outstanding was $16.07 trillion as of the end of the third quarter. So that's us, folks. It's you and I. We have increased, the American people have increased, and the nation has increased its national debt by, to $16.07 trillion for the third quarter. That is up from $15.86 trillion. That is up. Not a good thing.